So one of the first things we get asked a lot about in public relations is what exactly defines a crisis? What is a crisis versus a normal day or a small incident? And there are a few things in here that I'd like to talk about and then go over with you, and then we'll talk specifically about the Platte River situation. But you want to look really at a crisis in a number of ways. The first thing you want to know is you want to know how severe the crisis is. Did something happen that was catastrophic to the business, or was there an opportunity for you to recover quickly, or is this going to be a more elongated issue? How soon does one need to act in order to avert any public issues? So, these days in media is instantaneous. They are oftentimes and very frequently on the scene prior to us being there, or even faster than some emergency authorities. So, really, you need to act immediately. And immediately when you see something happen, or if you have a sense that something's about to happen, you need to act quickly. Who and what determines the news value? So I've heard a lot, I've been doing this 26 years, I hear a lot about, well, the news won't care. This really isn't a big deal. Nobody's going to really pay attention to this. That's almost always wrong. I can say about 90% of the time it's wrong. Who and what determines the news value, and then are there steps which have been preempted to make sure we're not caught flat-footed? So we'll talk in a minute more about this, but writing a crisis communications plan for your company is actually a critical process and a critical point in which you should think about before a crisis comes, so that you have a roadmap to follow. And one of those things in the crisis plan that we write is some things to prevent them from happening, and then what to do when they immediately start to happen. What are the first, second, and third, and fourth things to do? And then finally, it's not that big a deal attitude is almost always wrong. And that's interesting because when you try to downplay an incident, it's kind of like trying to close your eyes or bury your head in the sand and pretend it's not there. In today's news business, it is not like that. News is instantaneous. News happens almost as fast as the incident occurs. So I'll give you a quick example of something that happened in this building in the last 2 days, and that's the dismissal of Chad Kelly. Right? So the incident happened 72 hours ago. He's not a Bronco 24 hours ago. So in a matter of 3 days, he went from the back of the quarterback's box to not being a Bronco anymore. And what happened in the incident itself, in which we were involved, is that the news cycle picked it up so quickly that before even the Broncos had a chance to react, the media reacted.
Just to add, in our situation, it was not so much that we didn't think it was a big deal. It was we didn't realize it was a big deal. We didn't anticipate the impact it would have. So I don't think many companies that are hit with a crisis go in thinking, oh, it's not a big deal. I think they just had no idea how big it could possibly be. And it definitely floored us.
And one of the things that I think particularly senior level executives and companies want to do is hope for the best. And hope is one thing, but acting is something completely different. So there's some common misperceptions about crisis. And I want to talk about that. It's not that big a deal. We've talked about that. Press won't care and no one really will. We can contain it internally. How many of you in your companies have had a crisis and had somebody say inside your company, we can handle this internally? We don't need to hire anybody, we don't need to talk about it, we can just have this handled by HR, have this handled by a senior executive, and it'll be all taken care of. Let's not overblow this, let's keep it quiet, not make a big deal of it. We can handle this ourselves. Those misperceptions are the ones that, and we'll talk about, those are the ones that led to what happened at Platte River. And what happened specifically around Platte River and the server was not so much about ignorance, not so much about just ignoring the issue, but more significantly about if it happened, and it happened in a server, and it happened with in a technology that not a whole lot of people don't understand, we can keep this curtailed, we can shut this down. And in fact, as you know and about to see, quite the opposite happened. Now the real world. That picture to your right is Donald Trump Jr., who showed up at the front door of Platte River Networks during the crisis. Fox News broadcasted literally outside the front door of Platte River Networks every day for a week and a half. This is national. The Greta Van Susteren show, which I don't think is on Fox anymore, but in 2016 was a highly rated show on Fox. They were there every day. there's the president's son. The press and the public do care, and if you're questioning that, always err on the side of caution. You'll never, ever regret erring on the side of caution. Even if, at some point, you feel like we've got it handled, or a company like ours says it's done, you can move on and it's over, of which we did tell Platte River, that whole situation really always insinuates almost that you're going to have an idea about when it's over. But having, for example, a presidential candidate's son outside your front door while running for president is something that they didn't anticipate for sure. You can be detained if caught early. A professional firm is aiding and directly involved. If you have a firm that is able to come in right away and help you with the situation that has occurred, so the situation typically in a crisis has already happened. So there's nothing we can do to avoid the crisis. I tell folks all the time, it's like trying to put toothpaste back in a tube. There's really no way to do that. But one thing you can do is get a firm on board immediately or as soon as you can to help you both aid and obviously contain it as much as possible.
Something that we didn't anticipate were the death threats. So because we were involved in a presidential election, obviously a very emotional presidential election, and not going party, both sides. There's far right, there's far left, they don't like the other side. In fact, some of them hate them, as we've just seen with the pipe bombs going to many Democrats. So what we experienced, unfortunately, was because the perception was we were friends with Hillary Clinton and supporting her, which she was a customer, we were managing her email, right? That because we were supporting her, the far right, what they call alt-right, started to do some pretty crazy things. And we're going to hit on a little bit of it. But what we didn't anticipate, obviously, were actual death threats. That was pretty crazy.
That is, when you come into a situation, we've been involved in crises that involve death threats, and when that happens, again, those are situations where it is taken to a whole other level. This isn't about somebody necessarily doing something that's against a policy in your human resources manual. This is about a death threat involves getting federal authorities involved, and in this case, particularly because it's a U.S. presidential election, getting the federal authorities, including the FBI and Secret Service, involved. So, more to say about that. Never underestimate a crisis. And what happens, and how I pay my bills every day, is because people do. They underestimate how significant a crisis can be or how long it's going to take to fix it. So, if you are unprepared, if you go into a situation in which you don't have a plan, you don't have a spokesperson, you've not been media trained, you don't have a PR firm with you that has experience in the issue, oftentimes what you'll find is you will dig your hole much deeper before you can climb out of it. And that's not because you don't know what you're doing. You obviously are all experts in your field. But what public relations firms do, what I've done for 26 years, is help companies back out of situations sometimes as quietly as possible, or help them avert it altogether. And in this situation with Platte River Networks, it was a significant issue. We had headlines, just for a statistic for you, during the crisis, we had 136 headline stories in 71 different outlets. We're going to think about that for a second. So Platte River Networks in Denver, Colorado, had that many headlines from that many outlets in a matter of about 4 months, 5 months. So never enter a crisis unprepared. So this is and I'll let David talk about this as well, but I would like to show you this cycle in which crises happen. So if you look at the top right first, it is the identification of a crisis. So this isn't some small thing that we can fix. This is actually a crisis or an issue that we need to have consultation on, or we need to talk to somebody about. So you've identified the fact that it's a crisis. Hopefully you have prepared for the crisis and you're ready to put forth some effort to stop it. You want to prevent it from worsening in all ways possible. So one of the ways crises can quickly spin out of control, and I feel like I'm picking on David a lot here, but we've done this before, so we know what to expect. But in David's case, David and I would communicate daily before his bosses really took this seriously. And your bosses are in the room, right? Are they?
He took it seriously. Trust me. They just were not in a position to act in the way that you wanted us to.
So when I say seriously to a company is different than seriously to a PR firm, because we can preempt what's about to happen. And one of the things that Platte River did do right away was they were willing to at least acknowledge the fact that there was an issue, even though at the end of the day, as many outlets as tried to come after Platte River, by the time that the outlets were caught up to the story and there was a story moving, and it was high profile because of the presidential election, Platte River already knew what to expect. So back to those points about a response, by the time the federal press, both the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, the Philadelphia Inquirer, the New York Times, they were ready to go. CNN, they were all ready to go. We had a prevention and response process in place. And then obviously the recovery process. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, most companies do not expect a crisis to happen, so they're not prepared. We in our wildest dreams, never expected anything like this to happen. So we didn't have a plan. And it's interesting because we're an IT provider, and we tell our customers every day when it comes to a disaster recovery plan, right? You have to have one in place. So if you don't have access to your infrastructure, you lose your backups, lose access to your data, whether it's ransomware, like I'm talking about during the cybersecurity panel, you have to have a good plan in place so that when it occurs, you know what to do, who does what, how it's documented, who you communicate with, how you recover, how quickly. We do this every day for our customers. And a lot of companies do. But when it comes to crisis, they don't think about it. We had no idea.
Well, I talk about crisis sometimes as it's almost like a car accident. You're on your way to work, you don't anticipate anything, and something happens on the way to work, and somebody bumps into you because they're not watching, or they're not paying attention. And all of a sudden, what would be considered a normal drive to work has turned into a more serious situation. And that really, when it comes to Platte River has done so much good work and won so many awards for so long, that this idea of something actually happening at a high IT level oftentimes didn't register with Platte River, but it doesn't register with a lot of firms because they think, we protect it, we understand what we're doing, we've got this handled. And when it came down to it, when the news really went after Platte River, and I was their spokesman as their spokesman for about a year and a half, I can tell you, as much as they wanted to blame Platte River for this incident with Secretary Clinton, there was no blame to be had at Platte River. When they actually peeled back all the layers of the onion, they went all the way back. They went back from, and you'll see here in a minute, what kinds of things they did to Platte River, or tried to do to Platte River, ended up being that Platte River was never at fault. Platte River never did anything wrong, when in fact, there were other culpable people, including the secretary, who housed her server in her basement and had State Department work on the server on her